Story 1. Hi, so this happened about 6 years ago, back in 2019. I, a female, was 24 years old at the time, still living in New Jersey. I had just finished college and was working as a shift manager at a fast food restaurant, which I will not name, while also doing my tattoo apprenticeship. One day, one of the cashiers, who I will call Jane, came up to me and asked for help because there was a situation at the counter she didn't really know how to deal with. At the counter was a man and his son, and behind them was a woman with 2 younger children. The man explained that he was the father of his 10-year-old son, and the woman behind him was his ex, who was the mother of his son. However, he was not the father of her 2 other children. He had custody of his son that day, so he was taking him out for lunch and then to visit a museum. According to him, the mother of his child and her 2 other kids happened to show up at the restaurant right around the same time he arrived. She was demanding that he also treat her 2 other children to lunch and take them to the museum as well. The man told her that he was responsible for his son and his son only. His ex then tried to interject, saying she didn't want her other children to feel left out, while her oldest child, the son they shared, got special treatment. She added that the fathers of her 2 younger children were not in the picture and said she wanted him to pay for their lunches as well. I told Jane that I would take it from there. The man then told me that he would like to order 2 bacon cheeseburger combos for himself and his son. As I was taking his order, the woman began shouting out the order for her 2 other children. The man and his ex started arguing again. The man then turned to me and firmly stated that he would only be paying for his own order and his son's, and that he would be paying in cash. The woman then shouted at me to add her order to his as well. I told her that she would need to wait her turn. The man paid for his order and stepped aside to wait. The woman then came up to me and gave me her order along with the orders for her children. When I told her the price of the 3 combos for herself and her 2 kids, she asked if Booker, referring to her ex, had already paid for them. I explained that his order was only for himself and his son, and that her order was separate. I also pointed out that I only took her order after the man had already paid, so there was no way it could have been included in his purchase. The woman then began yelling at me, saying how hard it was for her to be a single mother and that she didn't have the money to pay. She pointed at the man again and insisted that he should have paid for her order because he was single, had a full-time job, and lived alone. The man responded by raising his voice and repeating that her 2 other children were not his responsibility. I told the woman that I truly sympathized with her, and I genuinely did, but I could not just add her order to another customer's bill, especially when that customer had made it clear that he would only be paying for his and his son's meals. I then asked her if she still wanted to pay for her order or if I needed to cancel it. Instead of answering, she tried to grab the man's wallet and demanded that he give her his credit card. He pushed her away to stop her, and she left. Before walking out, she told the man to take her 2 other children with him to the museum. Yes, she really did just leave her children with him. At that point, I didn't quite know what else to do. But the man told me he wanted to buy some fries and chili for her 2 children who had been left with him. He explained that he would drop them off at their mother's home himself. I told him not to worry about paying for the extra fries, it was on the house, and I would simply add them to his existing order. I decided to share this because I recently witnessed another parent randomly leaving their child at a fast food restaurant, and it reminded me of this incident. Edit. Some people seemed confused in the comments about one detail. While the man did pay for his order in cash, his ex demanded that he give her his card to pay for hers. As far as I know, wallets can carry both cards and cash. I just wanted to clear that up. Story 2. So once again, some background. I worked at a theme park from 2017 to 2020. I worked on the events team for the majority of that time. Fun fact, I was also a minor in almost all of these situations. Our biggest event every year is called Brick or Treat. It was a Halloween event that ran the entire month of October on the weekends. It was by far our most packed time of year besides New Year's. Our biggest attraction was the trail. It was a series of cutely decorated houses that contained some of our employees dressed up in pretty lame costumes passing out candy. It took 1-2 hours to get through the whole thing depending on how busy it was. Working the entrance of the trail, we already ran into entitled parents who got mad when we didn't give them a bag for candy. The trail was free with a cost of admission and parents always got mad as if they paid extra for it. We were only allowed to give bags to kids 12 and under, although really it was more like 312. Yet you would have grown men and women mad, they wouldn't be getting a lollipop and a Laffy Taffy. That, or they would get a bag for their newborn. Anyways, the trail ran from 2 o'clock to 7 p.m. sharp. We rarely open earlier, and we never stay open later. This was obviously a breeding ground for entitled parents who would arrive just after closing. I had my boss stick me at the entrance or exit every day cause nothing made my day more than arguing with rude parents. At 7, if no one was around, we put up the gate and sat by the entrance until we cleared the trail. Then you would have moms and dads dragging their children down to us and say, "Hey, let's do the trail," only for me to say, "Sorry, our trail is closed." Most people were upset, but understood and went to wait for fireworks. However, the entitled parents, they would scream at me and demand I let them down. "It's only 7:05, just let us go." And I would have to inform them that it was not only a safety hazard, but our characters are simply no longer on the trail. There's no candy or anything. That or our VIP guests who paid extra to go through the trail privately are about to go down, and since you are not a VIP, you cannot experience it for free just because you were late. Well, one entitled dad did not like that. "Entitled dad, let us go down, it's only 7:10. The line was too long earlier, and we wanted to go on rides until it went down. Me, "I'm sorry, sir, our trail closes at exact 7 o'clock every day. Due to your safety, we cannot let you go down. However, our trail will be open tomorrow for all guests starting at 2 p.m. Then the entitled dad sees the VIP guests exiting the trail and loses his absolute mind. "What about them? Why do they get to go down?" "Sir, those are our VIP guests. They paid extra to experience the trail privately." "I used to be a VIP. I've bought VIP so many times that I've come here, and this is ridiculous. This is how you treat VIP customers." At this point, I kinda was holding back a laugh. Me and my coworker, who was there with me, just couldn't get over the irony in what he was saying. If he would have been a VIP this time, he would have gotten to experience the trail, so why was he so angry? It was no one's fault but his. Yet he continued to throw his tantrum and even got his kids in on it. Entitled dad, tell this girl she ruined your day and vacation. Entitled kids 1 and 2, you're ruining our vacation. The kids kept mumbling things and crying and about how we should just let them go down the trail, and I just sat there with a smile on my face. Then the entitled dad pulls out his phone. "See? Now you made my kids cry. I'm calling y'all's VIP services. What's your name?" Me and my coworker proudly display our name tags with big grins. The dad starts screaming at the guy on the phone, who I low-key think isn't even related to the theme park, and tells him our names but butchers the pronunciation. Anyways, after his whiny fit, he proceeds to stomp off after realizing there was quite literally nothing else he could do to us. He mumbled a "sorry boys, she ruined our vacation" to his rude children and ran off. Shortly afterwards, another family came up around 7:40-ish and was also turned away from the trail by us. But we supplied them with what my boss calls "don't whine bags." These were bags of candy from the trail to give to people who showed up late. The entitled dad and his kids would have gotten a bag of candy if they would have stopped complaining for literally 1 moment. We would go and grab them a bag. But they were so insistent on getting to go down the trail that we just didn't care anymore. Story 3. I just came across this subreddit and decided to share. I work as a radio frequency engineer, which I was doing drive testing, or basically testing a cell tower to see if it's up to spec. It's a very niche job where most people are flown in from all parts of the country, but it pays well. Anyway, I got dispatched to rural South Dakota in November last year, second week ever doing this line of work. Prior to that, I've been laid off from at help desk for 4 months and was doing Uber to survive. Thanks to a certain, now former, CEOs of a cell company with a magenta T logo flapping his big mouth and pushing the delivery date for a new technology to be sooner, when the existing deadline was already unrealistic. Most of us are working double shifts 7 days a week and sleeping in the car to meet workload demands. So my rental car is a mess of wires, 5 antennas on the roof, a laptop with all these dancing bar charts in the passenger seat, food wrappers, empty Gatorade soda bottles, and I'm probably going on my 3rd day of not showering since, of course, there's hardly any gyms or truck stops in the area, and as busy as some nights get, it's hardly worth getting a hotel. I'm almost done with a site on a narrow dirt road on the side of a mountain when I see this Ford F-250 with all 4 lights on go up behind me. By the way, forgive my ignorance, but why do y'all drive like that? Even now that I have an SUV, it still blinds the hell out of me. I thought she stopped behind me because I was blocking her way, so I moved the car far enough out of the way for her to pass and go back to work. Then, Karen, in all of her self-righteous and entitled glory and stereotypes, not just the pixie cut and age, but I now picture her voice, which is almost like Lois Griffin, nasally with a bit of whininess to it. She goes up to my window while I'm trying to get an accurate reading. Instead of just knocking on my window with her knuckles, she decides to use her ring to knock on the window, which of course is loud as heck and startles me. But she thinks she's slick by trying to call me out on it. She starts asking what I'm doing. I calmly explain that I'm testing the cell tower and point at it, and a bunch of her other questions. She then demands that I show her my ID or authorization letter. I only have the ID of the contractor company, but since I'm new, nothing with a magenta T on it to save my life. I don't know who the hell X company is, so why should I believe you? And there's no printed authorization letter. Just an email on my phone giving the GPS coordinates of the towers. Lots of towers aren't exactly on a street address, and essential information about the tower, azimuths, frequencies, etc. Of course, this isn't good enough, and she says, "You're staying here until the cops come," and parks her truck sideways to block the road so that I can't get out. And then she gets in her truck, rolls up the window, and starts browsing Facebook, completely ignoring anything I said and even turning up her radio. Of course, this puts me ridiculously behind schedule since the sheriffs have better things to do. The nearest sheriff's department is 20 miles away, and I'm having to live stream via WhatsApp to my coordinators who can't believe what's happening, and I can't make it to my next site. When they finally arrived a little over an hour later, although the deputy was friendly with me, he was even ratting off weird things like me coming out of her driveway and blocking it, which I was nowhere near it. Nor did I even head any further down the street, and acting paranoid. By the time he got my side of the story, he was almost livid with her, and at this point, so was I. I was disappointed that he didn't follow through with his rantings about lying to the police being a felony, and also stuff about the fact that he could also send her to jail for placing me in false imprisonment. And at the moment I was pissed and said, "Well, what's stopping you? I want to press charges, but c'est la vie." By the time I left, 1.5 hours already passed, and of course, I lost the second shift commission since I wasn't able to make it in time. I've since had to make my own magnet decals with a major cell carrier's logo on it. Picked up cars that are more likely to be used in an official capacity, for example Ford Explorer, Chevy Silverado, because nice try with a Camry, right? Orange safety vest. Added a sticker with a cell carrier's logo to my employee badge. Let's see you whine at me now, Karens and Kevins of the world. So far nobody really said anything to me. Besides, even if someone was up to no good, would they choose some rural town without so much as a store for a few miles and sit on the side of the road at 6 p.m. with all lights on? Also, if the average crook was boxed in like that, that's sure a fine way to put her life at risk. If I found someone that's suspicious, I'd go home, copy their license plates, and call the cops from the safety of my house. What an idiot. Story 4. I work as a freelance photographer, which means my schedule is all over the place. Some days I'm shooting weddings, other days I'm doing corporate headshots, and sometimes I'm stuck in editing hell for hours. My best friend and roommate works as a graphic designer at this small independent print shop downtown. Since we live about 30 minutes out in the suburbs, I often time my downtown appointments so I can catch a ride home with her instead of dealing with the train. The print shop is one of those cozy local businesses that's been around forever. It's got that old-school charm with vintage printing equipment in the back and a small front area where customers can browse samples and chat with the staff. By 4 in the afternoon, most of the employees have gone home, leaving just my friend and one other coworker to close up. I've gotten into the habit of hanging out in the front area with my laptop, editing photos or answering emails while I wait for her to finish up. The routine is pretty simple. At 5 o'clock sharp, they lock the front door and spend the next 15 to 20 minutes gathering their things and shutting down equipment in the back. I just sit there quietly, staying out of their way until they're ready to leave. It's worked out perfectly for months. Last Friday started like any other day. I had a morning shoot with a local restaurant for their new menu photos, finished up around 3, and headed over to the print shop to wait for my friend. I settled into my usual spot near the window with my laptop and got to work on some photo editing. The afternoon was quiet, with only a few customers trickling in before closing time. Right around 5:10, I noticed someone approaching the glass front door. This woman in her 50s walked up and immediately started tapping on the glass when she saw me sitting inside. I looked up from my laptop and mouthed clearly at her through the door that the shop was closed. But she wasn't having it. She cupped her hands around her mouth and yelled back that she had a question. I pointed at my wrist where a watch would be and spoke loudly so she could hear me through the glass, telling her I was sorry but the shop closed at 5 and I didn't work there. That's when things started getting weird. Instead of walking away like a normal person, she grabbed the door handle and started shaking it violently, like she thought she could somehow force it open through sheer determination. When that didn't work, she went back to pounding on the glass with her fist, much harder this time. I sighed and set my laptop down on the chair. This woman clearly wasn't going to give up, so I walked over to the door to try explaining the situation more clearly. As soon as I got close enough, she started screaming at me that she only had one question and asking if I could let her in so she could talk to me. The whole screaming thing was ridiculous since we were literally separated by just a thin piece of glass, but I tried to stay calm and reasonable. I explained to her that I didn't work there and that the door was locked from the inside by a key I didn't have, so I couldn't let her in. That's when she completely lost it. Her face turned red and she started yelling even louder, calling me a jerk and saying she knew the shop was closed, but it was just one question. To emphasize her point, she slammed her open palm against the glass door as hard as she could. I've never seen anything like what happened next. The entire glass door just exploded. Not cracked, not spider-webbed, but completely shattered into thousands of tiny pieces that came raining down onto the sidewalk and the shop floor. I had instinctively stepped back when she started getting aggressive, which probably saved me from getting cut by flying glass. The woman just stood there blinking in complete shock, staring at the destruction she had caused. For a split second, neither of us moved. Then reality seemed to hit her, and she turned around and started walking away down the sidewalk as fast as her legs could carry her. But I wasn't about to let her just walk away from this mess. I quickly grabbed my phone and jacket and took off after her, being careful to step around the broken glass. Luckily, we're in a major metropolitan area, so there are always police officers around. I only had to follow her for about half a block before I spotted a cop standing on the street corner. I called out to the officer, explaining that this woman had just destroyed property and was trying to leave the scene. The officer looked up and saw me pointing at the woman, who was still trying to hurry away but was now looking back nervously over her shoulder. The officer told her to stop where she was. We all walked back to the print shop together, with the woman ranting the entire way about how none of this was her fault, and how I should have just let her in, and how she was going to sue everyone involved. The officer took one look at the completely destroyed door and the glass scattered everywhere and immediately called for backup. 2 more officers arrived within minutes, and by then my friend and her coworker had come up from the back to see what all the commotion was about. Their faces when they saw the front door were absolutely priceless. The officers took statements from everyone, and one of them went to the back with the shop owner to review the security footage that had captured the whole incident. The footage showed everything exactly as I had described it. The woman approaching the door, the increasingly aggressive behavior, and the moment when she slammed her hand against the glass and shattered it completely. There was no question about what had happened or who was responsible. Karen got arrested on the spot for destruction of property and disturbing the peace. As they were putting her in the police car, she was still screaming about how unfair it all was and how she was going to fight the charges. The officer who took my statement told me I would probably need to testify in court to help the shop owner pursue civil damages on top of the criminal charges. I told him I would absolutely testify and would gladly do it. The whole thing was surreal, all because someone couldn't accept that a business was closed and that I didn't work there. The shop owner had to pay for emergency board-up service that night and a new custom glass door, which wasn't cheap. But at least they had security footage and multiple witnesses, so getting reimbursed through the court system should be straightforward. My friend and I still laugh about it sometimes. She jokes that I'm banned from waiting in the front area anymore because I attract crazy customers. But honestly, I think some people just can't handle being told no, even when the person saying it has absolutely no power to help them anyway. Story 5. Oh my, there is so much history in my almost 45 years of existence. My 70-year-old father grew up extremely poor, and he was one of 3 children. He was apparently the only one who was made to do all the outside chores, including looking after the cattle and other animals before and after school, mowing the lawn, and so on. He was raised to work from the moment he woke up until he went to bed, essentially earning everything he ever received in life. He learned that the man of the house was to be treated with respect, no matter what. My 68-year-old mother, on the other hand, grew up without having to lift a finger. She never had to cook, clean, or do much of anything in the house. Her family was far wealthier than my father's by at least 10 times. She was also raised to believe that the sun shined upon the man and that the world revolved around him. They met in junior high school. My mom was 17, and my dad was 19 when they got married. Mom worked until she adopted my brother in 1978, and then adopted me 2 years later. She was a stay-at-home mother until 1991, when she began working as a care worker. My dad continued working in the same fashion he was raised in, except without the farming lifestyle. He maintained everything outside, looked after all the vehicles, and handled similar responsibilities. Throughout my upbringing, my parents frequently borrowed money from my maternal grandparents. Over time, it became an expectation rather than a request. The money wasn't for necessities, but for wants like antique vehicles, a pool, or help with vacations. If my grandparents ever said no, my mom would guilt them by crying and making them feel bad. My brother could do no wrong, even though he treated both of my parents poorly. He was born with heart issues, and according to my mom, that was the reason he could get away with anything. I was raised to be a people pleaser. The focus was always on the man. I was made to feel bad for having feelings or emotions. I was constantly compared to my brother, who easily understood most schoolwork, while I struggled with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and found school to be a challenge. I was raised not to trust people. My father would rant endlessly and use strong language, while my mother would simply listen and put up with it. He is strongly against the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and other communities, and he was very outspoken about it at home. My mom was more discreet about her views, but they were essentially the same. I am bisexual and have been an advocate, but I never made the choice to come out to them. Over the years, I begged my dad to teach me man skills, but he never would. I suppose he saw me as a nuisance and not worth the effort. My relationships have always been complicated because I tend to be overly understanding and put up with far too much from men. I have little patience for women's experiences and emotions, but instead of simply listening, I always try to fix things. I've been working on this for years in therapy, but sometimes I fail badly. As for my parents, I've held a lot of resentment toward both of them because of the differences in how they treated my brother compared to me. I still feel that way, even though my brother passed away in 2019. My parents never really wanted to spend much time with me. It was always about my brother. I've had family members tell me in the past that they never heard my parents talk about me, only about my brother. I did have a good relationship with my brother. I didn't have many issues with him personally. My frustration was with my parents, who allowed his behavior toward them and toward each other to continue. Despite everything they did for him, he still acted the way he did. Family dynamics can be complicated, to say the least. My grandparents on my mom's side and I were very close. I looked after them in their home until they passed away. Most of that responsibility was placed on me, and while I could have refused, I saw them as more like parents than my own parents were. My mom used that connection to her advantage, making it an expectation that I would be the primary caregiver for both of them. They passed away 1 year apart. For years, my parents have had a sense of entitlement. I know I am the failed child, even though I am now their only living child. Now that they are seniors, my mom, especially, has mentioned several times her expectation that I will take care of them when they can no longer take care of themselves. My parents own so many possessions that I have begged them to sort through and deal with while they still can. I've explained that it wouldn't be fair to leave everything for me to handle, especially since my brother is no longer here to help. But they refuse. My dad won't sell anything, or even give me written instructions for after they pass away. I cannot afford to quit my job or take a leave of absence to care for them when the time comes. They know this because I've told them. They refuse to acknowledge it. If I could, maybe I would consider it. But the reality is that taking care of both my grandparents was an emotional roller coaster I was not prepared for. I honestly don't know if I can do it again. I live almost 2 hours away from them, so I would have to quit my job to meet their needs. I do not want to do that. Story 6. My sister, a former meth addict, I will call Nicole for this story, meets an alcoholic guy, I will call Josh. Nicole and Josh were a couple for a year, during which they had been involved in many police reports. So as partners in crime, they decide to get married. My mother, who has thyroid issues caused by previous crack use, gave my sister $5,000 from her personal savings. My father, who is a very social drinker, gave my sister $5,000. My wife told me, "Don't give them a dime." On the day of my sister's wedding, I arrived late. When I get there, I see Josh is sitting at the open bar. He is downing shot after shot. As a non-drinker, I just grab a white wine for my wife and a spirit. The bartender seemed upset that I got soda, which is cheap. Anyways, the pre-wedding day before the event was in a school gym with lunch tables, and the meal provided was veggies, chicken and sauce in a wrap. This entire event felt like a middle school prom. The wedding was in a church and went uneventful. However, during the commitment ceremony, Josh was sipping from a mixed drink. My sister was smoking a cigarette and had a Starbucks coffee in her hand. When my father asked, "Why don't you put down your drinks?" my sister said, "I need coffee. I am tired." I said, "If you're tired, stop smoking. It contains nicotine and is supposed to relax you." My sister screams like a banshee and says, "I am nervous, so I need to calm down. But I am tired, so I need some coffee." My wife says, "Are they stupid?" My sister says, "What would your stupid witch know about motherhood and marriage?" I laugh and say, "This is my wife." My mother at once screamed, "What? My son married that witch? When?" My sister interrupted with, "This is my wedding." Everyone is silent, and the wedding is complete. After the commitment ceremony, I am sitting at the post-wedding event where I am eating fried fish. Both of my parents are asking me about my previously hidden marriage when my sister yells, "Enough! Stop focusing on him. We are going to cut the cake." Josh approached the cake stumbling, and as they were cutting the cake, Josh fell forward, knocking the cake over. I approached the fallen cake with my wife behind me looking shocked. I grabbed the cake knife from my sister and cut a chunk of the undamaged cake from the wreckage. Put some cake on a plate for my wife. Then another slice for myself. I set the cake knife on the table next to the fallen cake. We grabbed some plastic forks and walked off. My sister yells, "What are you doing?" I said, "Getting some cake." My sister yells, "You don't get to decide who gets what cake. You didn't pay for it." "Neither did you. Give me your cake." "Screw you." I walk off to the table and eat my cake. My sister says, "Give me that cake now." I finished my cake, my wife finished her cake, and I returned to the damaged cake and got 2 more slices. My father says, "I can't believe I paid $600 for that cake." My mother interjected, "No, I paid $600 for that cake." The bartender then yells, "That cake cost $200. I let out a long sigh and grabbed a plate of fish veggie wraps. Then I just left. My parents see me leaving with a plastic tray of food. And as they start to yell at me about it, I just toss $50 in $1 bills at them. The $1 bill was supposed to be a funny wedding gift for my sister, but I just tossed it at my parents as I left. My wife didn't even bother grabbing the toaster she left on the gift table. As I walk to my car, my sister exits the door and yells, "You and your witch ruined my wedding." So I said, "Just take the extra $5,000 you pocketed and have another wedding." My wife then says, "At least this witch has been married to the man she loves for 4 years." My parents hear this and look shocked. We hop in the car and take off.